might breach international legal obligations or international legal arrangements that we have entered into. And can I answer specifically the other point? Was any ministerial direction given?
I would say to my honourable friend that yes, this does break international law in a very specific and limited way. We are taking the power to disapply the EU law concept of direct effect required by Article 4 in a certain very tightly defined circumstances. There are clear precedents for the UK and indeed other countries needing to consider their international obligations as circumstances change.
Well, quite a few to
Grant Shapps, Transport Secretary.
at this approach. Among them, it seems, Theresa May, speaking before Brandon Lewis had made that explicit admission the law was being broken.
The United Kingdom government signed the withdrawal agreement with the Northern Ireland Protocol. This Parliament voted that withdrawal agreement into UK legislation. The government is now changing the operation of that agreement. Given that, how can the government reassure future international partners
Gangsters!
that the UK can be trusted to abide by the legal
We can't trust the government.
it signed?
Liars.
Well, the suggestion that intentional law breaking is in prospect first emerged on Sunday night in the Financial
Rule of law.
but was presented thereafter by ministers as merely some inevitable tidying up. Now, however, it's quite clear that it's accepted to be illegal tidying up. That this is causing serious internal ructions was suggested by another
You what?
exclusive today that the government's Treasury Solicitor, head of the Government Legal Service, Sir Jonathan Jones, is stepping aside, reportedly very unhappy at a government content to break its obligations. The Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, Robert Buckland, is in the Cabinet. He made this oath when he took that role. I do swear in the office of Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain that I will respect the rule of law,
Great Britain.
so help me God.
Great
Is
Britain.
his position tenable after this? Well, we asked for an interview, he wasn't available. Attorney General,
That's why we're going New Britain, not Great Britain.
unavailable. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has spoken to the BBC.
Well, what the government's doing, in my view, is wrong. We need a deal, and I think a deal could be struck, and a deal is in the national interest. So rather than reopening old arguments, I think the government needs to focus on getting a deal, moving on, and actually focusing on the crisis that is the pandemic. I think that's what the public want.
Now, of course, governments do break the law. They're taken to judicial review and they lose from time to time, but mostly they make a stab at arguing they were compliant, which is different to this time. We can talk to now Sir Bob Neill, Chair of the Justice Committee in the Commons, whose question provoked the answer that Brandon Lewis gave. Very good afternoon to you, Sir Bob.
Afternoon.
Tell us about the question and what you were thinking when you got that answer.
Well, I simply wanted clarity on what seems to me to be a fundamental point. That, of course, there are sometimes things where you need to tidy up negotiations. That's one thing. Given that there had been speculation about this, I asked what I think was a straight question, and I got a straight answer. I give the Secretary credit for that, but I think it's a very troubling one, because Britain is a country which prides itself on standing by.
Britain or Great Britain?
Now, the rule of law applies whether that's inconvenient as well as when it's convenient to us. And that applies to international law as much as to domestic
I was going to ask about that. Let's just go with his qualification, specific and limited. Can you have little bit of law breaking, intentional law breaking that is acceptable?
Well, not to my mind, no. And I should be interested to see precisely what it is that's proposed when this legislation comes out that they think falls into that category. This isn't like, I think, changing some difficult transaction arrangements that sometimes occur in international affairs. When we signed the withdrawal agreement with its protocol, we registered it as an international treaty with the UN. Therefore, it has the force of international law. So, whatever we seek to do, and I hope that we are able to resolve this issue, heavens above, everybody wants us to try and get it.
Heavens above!
We seek to do, if we find something that we signed up to inconvenient, I'm afraid that doesn't mean that you can renege on your contract, if you like.
No,
that would damage our reputation long term. It's nice if we could sometimes, but you can't and you shouldn't. And I think that's the point that I'm concerned about. So I hope very much that
You what? International law?
we're putting us in a position where we breach.
MC Bones on the
We
mic.
signed up to.
Listening to everything you're saying, if they put a bill before
No beef,
Parliament
just
that is
bites.
incompatible with our
Get mad as you
obligations
like.
under the withdrawal agreement,
No beef, just
you're not
bites.
going to vote for it.
You
Are
what,
there
you
another
what?
39 or 40 of you who won't vote for it and will remove the government's majority on that bill?
I've been chairing the Justice Committee all afternoon since this happened, and I'm not in the business of setting up conspiracies. I don't want the government to get into this position in the first place. So I hope that comments of mine and others are perhaps a shot across the bows. This is not a wise route to go down.
But if they do go
There
down
can
it,
be other ways.
if they do go down it, you are not going to vote for a bill that is incompatible with our international obligation.
Well, I couldn't, of course not, and I don't think people would expect that. Now, maybe it doesn't come to that, and to be fair, I will look and see if the bill genuinely has that effect. So, with time to see the wording.
Yeah, we're judging it without seeing it. We're judging it without seeing it, which was why the admission, in advance that, by the way, it does break the law is an interesting one. Now, Brandon Lewis did quote some precedent, didn't he? He said the Finance Act 2013 was incompatible with a treaty obligation. We tried to look into that. It's quite complicated, the way in which that wasn't compatible. But to what extent, and I know you have a legal background, to what extent do governments, if you like, knowingly break the law and do so?
I can't wait to go live.
Very soon. In my experience, indeed. And of course, you can get certain circumstances, unlike Finance Act, which was very technical, like your right piece of legislation, a sort of force majeure situation might come along. Wartime situations come along, of course. Emergencies,
Of course.
perhaps. But that's not us, as I see it, where we are here. So that's why I think this will be a very, very unwise precedent to go down, because it damages your reputation in all future deals that you seek to strike with people.
It does seem like Sir Jonathan Jones, the head of the government legal service, is, broadly speaking, absolutely fed up with this. Doesn't like it. Reportedly didn't like some of the game playing last autumn when the Parliament was prorogued and there was talk of not obeying the Ben Act. We can all remember that. Are you in touch with him at all? Do you have much knowledge of his feelings today?
Not at all. I mean, I know Sir Jonathan a little, but no, absolutely not. That wouldn't be proper.
But
That wouldn't be just right and proper.
saying I can't do my job if I'm told here as a law officer to effectively be overseeing a breaking of the law.
Well, I've only heard what's been reported about Sir Jonathan's position, so you'll understand if I don't comment further on
No,
that.
okay. Is Robert Buckland's position credible, though? Because he actually really does. He has to swear a very serious oath that he will respect the rule of law.
Look, the Lord Chancellor is a friend and I think a very honourable man, and he has made clear and he takes his role very seriously. That's why I said let's see precisely what there is that is tabled, and that's why I'm keen to put a shot across the bows and just raise the fact that this is a serious issue.
Shots fired.
People, and I'm sure that the Lord Chancellor will adhere to his oath. He always has done, and I'm sure he would do so.
Sir Bob Neal, thank you so much for talking to us. And a little later in the programme, we'll hear from Lord O'Donnell, Gus O'Donnell, who used to be the head of the civil service. Right, it's just coming up to 5:15. Let's just have the headlines with Fiji.